Yes, I would say yes, you can open it.
Then I guess we have to go on the first slide.
I'm not hearing you totally.
You can go on first slide.
Yeah, we're leaving the music playing. Yeah. But you can open the meeting.
As I dance and I move with my feet on the ground. Oh yeah. From the earth, if you listen, you can hear there's a sound. Sweet sound. And it moves me. Yes, it shakes me to my core. What a feeling. It's a blessing, I am sure. Touch the ground. Don't you know this is where we are from? Come here, dance to the feeling. Touch it from the soil is a healing. Come here, dance to the feeling. Touch it from the soil is a healing. Come here, na 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 na.
So welcome everyone to our panel discussion today with our very exciting topic, digging deeper the real costs of degraded soils. And I already saw now some people started posting where they're from, where they're joining from Berlin, from India, from Italy. So please feel free, as still people are still joining at the moment. Just post where you're joining from, so we have a little bit of an overview where people are coming from. So yeah, just to me, my name is Franziska, and I'm from the Safe Soil Movement, and I will be guiding you through today's session. And yeah, I see people are posting in the chat where they're from Spain, from France, India, Austria, Italy. That's great. People are really coming from all over Europe, and yes, even India. Amazing. Hello to everyone. We're very excited to have you here. And yeah, I'm here with three very inspiring speakers, um, which are just turning on the camera right now. We have Benedikt Bösel. He's an agricultural economist and a farmer at his own regenerative farm, Gut and Bösel. And then there's Sonja Stuchte with us. She's the founder of the Land Banking Group and also social entrepreneur, so very much also expert in the finance side. And we have Christoph Gornot. He's a scientist and working group leader at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. So thank you so much for being here with us today. We're super excited to have your expertise on this panel, and yeah, to hear from you today. Just also for information, all three speakers are based in Germany, so they bring in a German and EU perspective to the panel, but of course also having the global implications in mind. Yeah, what is this panel today about? What we'll be looking at? So we are in times at the moment of geopolitical instability and of course accelerating climate change. And the question of how we produce our food has never been more critical than it is at the moment. And regenerative practices are often seen as a solution to improve soils and restore ecosystems. And we would like to look at today at the question, is this also economically viable? And what actually are the costs of inaction? So what happens if we don't change the way we farm at the moment? What are the consequences? So we'll explore these tensions and opportunities today. And there will also be a Q&A in the end. So please feel free to drop in your questions throughout the session in the chat. And we'll address the questions then more towards the end of the session. So yeah, hi to everybody who just joined now. We're very happy to have you here. Seeing now we're 73 people in, so hello to everyone. Yeah, but now we'll definitely want to hear from our speakers who they are and why they're here. So let's dig in. And Sonja, I'd like to start with you. As you're coming from the finance sector, and what I personally find super fascinating is that your work involves giving nature an economic value. Could you just try to introduce yourself and let us know how you got involved with this topic? You're still on mute.
On mute. Should have learned this by now. Thank you, Franziska, for having me in the first place. Really, really excited. So many people so interested in this absolutely crucial topic. What got me interested, and just to be clear, I'm not a finance person, but I'm an economist. And having worked with technology to solve economic problems that really painfully involve our society and might change the way we live and the way we do business has always fascinated. And looking at land use, I think there is a lot to gain if we simply change perspective from that being a source of extraction to looking at soil, agriculture as a source of wealth, considering that this is actually the wealth everything is built on, that we as a society and that our prosperity is referring to. So I started the Land Banking Group 3 years ago together with my partner in crime and life. coming from that perspective of what do we need to do to change our perspective on nature and on healthy soil from something that costs us money or is reducing the extractive uses we are imposing on it into it's our wealth, it's our most precious wealth, and how can we put a number at it? If we don't put a number on it, humans tend to consider this zero. No number is considered nil. To giving it a number, appreciating this figure, and understanding that if we do not only protect our soil, but if we grow the performance and the natural capital, which is the nutrients, the water retained, it's the fertility of the soil, then it's even more valuable. So we can be even richer if we understand how precious this soil is and how it's creating products and services in the future. And I'm super excited to have had the opportunity in the last 3 years to build a tech stack that allows us to measure and document and register these developments in the biophysical space and offer it as an underlying, how the finance world would say, as the reference, as the value that is then being measured in financial terms and that can be invested in at scale and that can be held and transacted as an investor, and hence adding a completely new opportunity to rational investors to invest into future and into future prosperity building based on thriving ecosystems and healthy soil.
Thank you so much, Sonja, for this very interesting introduction and your perspective on soil and the way you've been working with it. Christoph, over to you. Your academic career actually started after you've been working at dairy farms yourself. What role has soil played in your life?
Yeah, hello. First of all, I'm also very pleased to see so many people listening in. And yeah, I think you described this already, Franziska. So I started as a farmer. I have been grown up in a dairy farm in northern Germany, and I think the soil was very important on my everyday life. So I think my father and my grandfather, they all worked on the farm, and I think their soil was the central element. I think without that, no production was possible. And I think I have been grown up in that way. And after I also did a practical training on agriculture and worked for several years on the farm, I decided to study that to gain more knowledge on that. I think that was I was always inspired by agriculture productivity and how this is taking place on soils. And in my studies, I learned much more how soil is so much connected to so many aspects of our daily living, of our food we have today, of our decisions we make. And I think I also learned that soil and land in particular is much overlooked. So I think we all take this for granted, and we are standing every day on the soil and we think this is just there and this will always be there, but that's not the case. We are seeing also big decreases of soil fertility in the last couple of years, and projections also look in the direction that it will also continue. And I think that also fascinated me to learn more about the soil. And then I studied this, I did a PhD and I got a professorship on this. And now I'm also trying to link this aspect of soil to the aspect of climate impact research, because that's also really closely connected. And to give farmers something on their hand, how they could respond to the already negative effects of climate change, that is something where the soil plays a central role for me.
Yeah, thank you, Christoph. I really like that you shared that soil and land is being overlooked often, and I mean that's why we're all here today to talk about that. Last but not least, Benedict, you actually have a background in finance. How did you end up managing a farm with over 3,000 hectares, which is huge, by the way?
I was just a very bad banker. Um, so that was mainly the reason. No, I mean, I grew up as a child on the family farm and around farm. So I was always sort of the odd one out in the financial industry. And really, I was always a nature boy and a farmer. And I sort of came to terms with that after the first 10 years of my career sort of in finance. When I took over the family farm here 1 hour east of Berlin, and our farm is really characterized by very, very sandy soil and low precipitation, which of course is due to different reasons, but exponentially grown around the globe. And we started really on a journey on how we can use agricultural production systems to not only produce nutritious food, but also, do the things that Sonja and Christoph mentioned as far as building ecosystems, building value, building soil health, biodiversity, closing nutrient cycles is concerned. So we were very fortunate that there have been many, many pioneers and visionaries that started this long before us, on which work we were able to lean. And so this is what we've been basically doing here on our farm since 2019. And maybe just to round off the comments from the two prior speakers, it is the value aspect, it's the economic sense of doing it, it is the climate adaptability and the impact on climate, but it is also, of course, the impact on biodiversity, on health, on rural development, on education. So what we are talking about is not agriculture per se. We're really talking about sort of the where the polycrisis comes together. So understanding that gives so much hope, not only because we understand that we can actually overcome it through helping or using nature as a colleague, as a partner, as a having nature fight with us, but also the implication of investment, which has an incredible return. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Benedict, and all three of you for these introductions. And Benedict, you already started to go into the challenges that we have and the interconnected crises that are there. And we'd like to go dive a little bit deeper into that. What are the problems that we're having with soil health? What are the issues there? Christoph, could you describe a little bit also from a scientific perspective what is actually the current state of our soils? And maybe you can also explain in like simple terms what is the problem with degraded soils and why does it matter to all of us in the end?
Yeah, thanks. I think, several questions underlying here. I think if we talk about fertile soil or the other way around, degraded soil, I think it's important to mention that there are multiple ways how a soil could be degraded. I think in the end, there could be also natural forcing, but often it is, and mainly it is the human forcing which plays the major role. And I think we have to look at compaction of soil, so it's too heavy machinery. We have loss of organic matter by the not right use of tillage systems. We have contamination from plant protection. We have loss of biodiversity, which is also a link between plant protection and the tillage system. And we have salinization, I think, in coastal areas, which plays an important role, also of too much irrigation in some areas in the Mediterranean plays particular. And the most important source is still the erosion and water erosion and wind erosion. I think that is all matters and that all influences the soil in a negative way. And I think when we look at Europe, I think we definitely see that many soils have at least one of these aspects already where they are degraded. I think some studies from the European Environmental Agency say that above 60% of these soils have at least one contaminating factor, which makes the soil unhealthy, or it could have been healthier when that would not be the case. And I think that's a substantial amount, right? 60% or even a bit higher could have more than 60% of our soils could have been better, could have been provided higher yields and more ecosystem services in the end. I think that's also what Benedict already mentioned. So it's not only about the agricultural production, it's not only about that the farmers get the incomes, that's also about that, but it's also about the soil. They matter with respect to public health. So everyone's health is affected by that. So if we have contamination of the soil, that also has an influence on our food we actually eat on an everyday basis. It has effect on climate change. So, and the consequences of climate change is not only that only the farmers are feeling that, but I think we all facing every day the consequences of climate change, of river floods, of aerosols, of many aspects of risk which has increased. And I think overall the whole society is facing substantial losses, economic losses by these degraded soils. And if we expand this also from the European view a bit, I think, and look at around the globe, I think we also have then aspects of food insecurity to be considered, and rural poverty, which also plays an important role. And I think that all matters. I think it definitely goes beyond what the farmers face.
Yeah, thank you, Christoph, for giving this overview and really showing us that we all are affected by soil degradation in the end, and that our food, the quality of our food, is affected. So that's super interesting and yeah, very relevant. Benedict, for you, you are a farmer yourself. What kind of challenges are you facing in your region, or also farmers in your region with soils and that kind of aspect? And also, if you'd like to talk about why isn't actually regenerative practices more widely adapted, even though it seems such a obvious solution, but still it's not that widely adapted. So these are like two questions in one.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, I guess the first question I can answer pretty quickly, although it's actually more complex than you may think. But like the weather has obviously the dominant impact on our production factor, right? So right now, today, we had a forecast to receive around 10 to 12 liters of rain. We had 1 liter, right? The same was happening last weekend. So the last time we actually had 17 liters of rain was the end of March. And all our fields right now need the water incredibly bad because they are just about to fill, depending on the wheat or depending on the variety, but they're like filling the corn. If the corn is not being filled, we've got nothing to harvest, so we have nothing to sell, to be sold. So right now we are under severe economic threat of no rain, right? And combining that with sandy soils that are per se not good at, well, first up, infiltrating water, but then also storing water because it lacks the physical and the biological content to do that, is something that, of course, we're working on through various, let's say, methods that we can talk about later a bit. So that's the predominant thing for us, right? Of course, there was a whole discussion about market prices and if they reflect, whatever we do on the farm, but I'll leave that out for now. Maybe towards the second question, why is the adoption so slow? Well, that's a big one, right? I'm going to try to sum it up on a very general term. So these are also some of my own assumptions, and there's arguments for and against, but let me just go ahead. So around 50 years ago, we said, or we had an aim that was producing as much food as we can for the cheapest possible price. And there was good reason to do so. There was wars, we had to rebuild, where there was famine, so we needed that. But back in the day, we based it on the wrong assumptions, which were that water and energy are cheap and that healthy soil and biodiversity are abundant production factors that you don't have to pay for. And so the whole system has been based on those assumptions, which today we understand are wrong, with an outcome that ignores sort of the effects of that production outcome. And that has pretty much three decisive influences. One, farmers have been pushed into dependency. So they have done whatever they were asked to do by also the public in a way of producing as much as they possibly can and for the cheapest possible price. So they had to specialize, they had to invest, they had to grow which means today they maybe have only one or two products, and they depend on world market prices and import prices and subsidies and so forth and so forth and so on. So even if they would want to change, they're often caught in their production system, because if you're in debt and you have to pay back the bank, you can't afford to have too much, let's say, adaptation to your production model. The second part is, this is something Sonja will certainly talk about in some sense, is the creation of externalized cost of production, right? So the cheapest possible product in the supermarket today, specifically with regards to meat, is the product that is the most costly in real terms. The reason why it is so cheap is because the real cost of production, or part of the real cost of production, are pushed onto society and the ecosystems. So that's where soil degradation comes in, and a lot of factors that Christoph pointed out. So that's the second biggest factor. And the third biggest factor is that, and that's maybe the most difficult to get to, that all the systems surrounding agriculture, so the science, what are we actually trying to achieve with the science? What's sort of the aim? What's the goal? The financing, the access to land, the education, all these systems surrounding agriculture have similarly been focused on maximum production for the cheapest possible price. So that means, to answer your question, why is it so difficult to change? Well, first of all, farmers are still kept in those in captivity or in dependencies. So it's difficult to judge. It's difficult to come out of that if your margin is already so super low. And also, if they would want to, there is not enough data to know what reliably you can invest in. There is not enough research to have potential solutions, soil and regional ecosystem dependent on what is something that you might do or not do. Then there's also a huge cultural part, because farmers, they give their life every day, so they are deeply they have a big esteem and respect with their own work. And because we've had a problem of, let's say, appreciation, I would say, that is a very difficult area to come out of, to actually change culturally and your ethics, your production ethics, which this really is. It's a cultural shift we're asking from people that are working too much and are already incredibly under pressure. And then comes another area, which is the average age of farm managers is 50 and higher. So changing your ways is something that, I don't know, I mean, I would have problems changing my ways, and I'm only 40. But so what we're asking for is really so much, and we need courage, we need support, we need love, we need transaction capital, and we need education, and all of these are not that easy to bring together.
Yeah.
And to add to this, Benedict, we also need patience, and that's what we do not have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I mean, you pointed out that kind of products are too cheap, and then society, nature has to take the costs of these parts. And I know, Sonja, you are also very much knowledgeable in that area, and also the land banking group recently published an article about that we kind of build our economic growth on the underpriced value of nature. Maybe you want to share a little bit about that. We also have a slide for this, if you'd like to take it up right now.
Happy to. Yeah, it's what we call a Minsky moment. Minsky moment means economically we have been riding on a growth pathway which is actually built on wrong valuation. What does it mean? What wrong valuation? So we value what we have, like Benedict described, what we produce, and we value land on just delivering these products, these producers, not looking into that we are actually degrading this land as we go, as we use it and abuse it, to be honest. And it's so interesting when you touch soil, it's moist and it's lively. There's lots in there and it's dark and it smells. If you touch dirt, that's very different. It's dry, it's just running through your fingers like sand. And that's what we are transferring soil to. So we are running into a world where this value that we still attribute to a piece of land is suddenly to be reconsidered, and it might drop completely off, and the assets need to be re-evaluated. This is true for real estate assets, and this is even more true for nature assets like agricultural or forestry assets, because we have been of the opinion it's there in abundance and it will just restore, it will just regenerate. But it doesn't, because we are placing not 1 billion people, but 8 billion and soon 10 billion people on a planet where we need to be conscious about land use decisions, because we cannot move on. This doesn't mean we cannot live with that many people on the planet. We could, but we need to be way more conscious about what this underlying piece of land is used for and can really deliver going forward. So this is the risk we are running into this Minsky moment of discovering, when we had these slides in the beginning, that the UN is coming with an estimation that in 2050, that's not far away, that's 25 years away, that's soon. I mean, I have to out myself here, Benedict, I'm one of those mid-50s, and yes, it's increasingly difficult to change ways how you do things in life. You can, though. And it's really something that's so close. And if we have 90% degraded land, this means all our calculations of, I don't know, half of the GDP is at risk with climate change. No, it's way more. It's probably 100% and pretty soonish. And if we don't have anything to eat, there will be geopolitical consequences. There will be huge knock-on effects that have not even been factored in. Not going into this gloomy, we are falling down that cliff perspective. We need to simply reconsider how we evaluate the piece of land we're working with. And this might be a way forward. Benedict just described how land stewards, how farmers are currently with their back to the wall, because they are indebted, because they're only being paid for one type of result that they are producing, which is crop. We as society, and especially people in the closer vicinity, we actually should and must pay for all the other services and products a farmer is producing. This is water retention, which is absolutely essential in a world where natural hazards are becoming more frequent and more fierce, where we have floods all the time, where we have cooling effects thanks to biomass, where we have water cleaning capacity, where we have cleaning of air. So all these other aspects that are being delivered and just taken for granted and taken for free, because it's a positive externality. There's not only a negative externality, there are also positive externalities. And so the ambition that we are trying to embrace with what we're doing is to really identify and quantify those positive externalities as something that people beyond the use of the crops are paying for. And this would completely re-evaluate assets. This would make it clear that a sealed piece of land, which currently is 1,000 times more valuable in our perception than a piece of healthy soil, that would completely invert. The entire logic would change. But, and that you have nicely described, means we have to adjust our definition of success and our KPIs, our reward systems. And that's, on the one hand, a long journey, on the other hand, one that might be around the corner, even closer than we think, because we are riding up this curve. And as we see our land degrading and the consequences hitting home, there is an increasing understanding on the side of capital markets that a piece of land that cannot deliver products and services in the future has to be valued to a lesser degree.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And it's always having like a scary reaction within me when I hear again the facts, like how much of our economic growth could be affected, and these kind of points. It's like really, yeah, it is urgent now. We have to do something. So you also already started with some mentioning some solutions and having some like more positive outlook. For that, I would really like, sorry. For that, my voice. Okay. Yeah, Benedict, I know you have amazing solutions on your farm for regenerative farming. So I really would really like to hear what kind of methods you're using on the ground, and then later from Christoph to see how can we put that into in a global level, what kind of things are possible there. But Benedict, we have also a short video of your farm, which will be very interesting for our participants here. So let's just share that, and then you can also tell us a little bit about it.
Sure, thank you. I mean, first of all, I think what is important to state is that there is no silver bullet. There's not one solution that fits all. What I can say, and you will see it once the video starts playing a bit, that trying to be as effective as we can as far as let's say unit economics is concerned, which of course is the reality for most farms on the planet, let's say most large industrial farms, is that if you have a field, an open field like this, where you can drive straight for the longest time being, then that makes the economics quite good in comparison. But what we've done here is we have stripped nature of its strength because we have taken apart the different ecosystems. And what you see now here is, for instance, an agroforestry system where we're trying to actually bring the ecosystems back together. So we're integrating agroforestry lines that are evenly dispersed in an agricultural field with the cows. So suddenly we have agroforestry, so we've got trees, we've got arable farming, and we've got cows that can interact like an intact ecosystem. And as I said, if you see some of those images of the farm, this is pretty much what we are researching and what we are working with. This is, for instance, a system that is differently designed. This is a larger system. But what we really need is complexity, and what we need is diversity, and what we need is resilience and independence. And that's in a sense the beautiful part, because in that lies adaptability, and it lies economic potential, and it lies so much more, and many of the things I've already pointed out, other than the nutritious food. But to, let's say, bring these solutions into, let's say, landscape style, that is where we have to sort of find ways of being able to do that. And I pointed that out earlier. I think transition finance and education are probably two of the main ways of doing that. But we still have to understand how we can use which kind of agricultural instrument for what kind of regional and ecological context. So we are in a very dry area. So everything we do is focused on soil health and biodiversity. Because, if you ask me, the complexity is not that it gets reliably more dry or reliably wetter or whatever. It is the unforeseen consequences of what is coming. And as far as technological, let's say, solutions are concerned, you have to decide, am I going to go for too wet or too dry? But what nature's strength is the complexity, is the resilience, is you can cope with anything if you have an intact ecosystem. So that's how nature is designed. And that's what we're trying to derive our system to be at the the nature, the ecological optimum, but in a production system that yields nutritious food and allows us to be profitably working, making jobs available, and taking over responsibility in our area, so to say. And to be just very concrete, we saw some things in the picture. We focus very much on different composting and plant health mechanisms and instruments. We have 7 different agroforestry and syntropic agroforestry systems where we not only introduce fast-growing trees, but also plum, pear, apple, also different nuts, because we believe that to be quite a strong value proposition in terms of diversifying your product is concerned. And of course, the cows are an incredibly vital part of the whole philosophy because they're incorporated into the crop rotation. So they stand on arable land all year outside. So we basically try, where today we think of agriculture as horizontal monoculture and 1 harvest per year, we're actually trying to build a system where we have more harvests in the same year on the same field. And those systems, that being arable regenerative farming, agroforestry, and the integration of cows, actually having symbiotic relationships with each other. And that is how we actually want to develop sort of the system from here. But as I said, there is a beauty and there's good news and bad news. The bad news is none of us knows. No one knows what to do and what is the best thing to do. The good news is nature has an incredible capacity to regenerate itself. So even if we do all the mistakes that we still do, we already can see incredible effects, and we can actually now see them scientifically. So the good news outweigh the bad news. But now Christoph has to answer the difficult questions.
Well, yeah, indeed. I think that's not an easy task, and I think you really pointed that out, Benedict. We don't have the silver bullet, and it's also unlikely that we will get this. So I think we have to live with very different conditions. So you said this, you were working on sandy soils, other farmers were having more clayey soils. We have, if we look around the globe, complete different farm sizes also to be considered. And I mean, for that, we need different solutions. And if we look at the global south, we have many farmers who don't have access to their land. They don't have land rights even. And so how could you ask a farmer to invest in his or her land if the person has no access and no land rights? So they will never do that. And I think at the same time, we're also seeing that it is really urgent to do something. I think we are seeing substantial costs of inaction. I think around the globe, they are estimated to 400 billion US dollars per year. For the European Union, about 50 billion dollars per year, direct and indirect cost. I mean, that's the amount of the European subsidies. We don't need all the subsidies if we have our soils healthier. That would be the effect. I mean, and that's substantial. And I think that links to direct effects and indirect effects. And I think particularly indirect effects are even more important. So that if we don't have healthy soils, we don't have healthy food. And we have substantial costs on healthcare to be considered. And if we don't consider that, I think we are losing substantial amounts of money every year, and I think that is important. And at the same time, we are also bringing our Earth system to an edge where it is difficult to recover. And this is particularly what worries me. I think in the climate debate, this is described as a debate of loss and damages. So we will lose substantial amounts of our soil, or we will damage substantial amounts of our soil because of how we act as a human. And these loss and damages are often irreversible and existential. And I think that's a very worse combination. So irreversible and existential for the farmers, for the people living there, and also for the whole society. I think we have to turn the wheel and we have to find solutions. These solutions, they have to be locally adjusted. So in some areas, we may work with agroforestry. In other areas, we don't have the water. And to do that, there are other solutions to recover the soils. But I think the fact that we, of course, more knowledge would be desirable, but we don't have the time also to wait. So we have to act now, and we use the knowledge which we already have to bring this into action.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this global perspective also on the problem.
May I quickly add to this, Francesca?
Definitely.
And Christoph, thank you so much. It makes it so clear how big the problem is. And one thing we need to acknowledge is we are humans. We humans are so linear. We cannot think exponentially. And sometimes we are so stupid. Sometimes I'm reminded of that troll in Harry Potter's world. So that huge, very powerful, but so stupid thing there, and able to destroy so much and not understanding the implications. So I think there, as you said, there's no silver bullet, but I think we need to be very clear that we have to play along our human being. Yeah, so we are humans, and we are linear. We look after ourselves first, but what has made us strong in the past and why we have evolved as a species is we have been able to cooperate, to collaborate. That actually has made us strong in former times, and we need to come back to understanding and encouraging and designing systems that benefit those who collaborate. And if we start to collaborate on landscape level, like Benedict described, we have a huge opportunity to change massively how we've worked in the past and to get back to this complexity and diversity, because actually nature guides us the way, but we have been trained in the last hundreds of years to only look after ourselves, to be very egocentric and to optimize just our short-term benefit. And this is what I meant when I said we need to redefine success. Coming back to what really made us successful as species is collaborating and working on generational solutions.
Yeah, I think that's really also a key word, to bring these generational solutions that should last really a long time. And the question is, of course, how do we get there? What do we do also from a political side? I would be very curious to know, maybe from Benedict or Christoph, like, what do you think? What frameworks do we need? What incentives or systemic support to really scale regenerative solutions across Europe, also across the globe?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Let me tell you not what I think is possible. Let me tell you what I would do if I could change it. So I think undoubtedly we have to change the gap, the European gap, so the subsidy system, right? But I wouldn't do that. I would keep it as it is, because if we would change that, farmers will be stressed. Let's put it that way. And what we need is farmers to be open for transition, to be open to feel loved, to feel listened to feel included in it. So I would say, look, the gap stays as it is. First step. Second step is I would go and I would pay off their debt. So like we've saved banks, I would go to all the farms and pay off the debt so that they are not dependent to having to pay back the bank, so that they're actually free to start the transition immediately. Then that was the second part. Then I would do two things. I would look to find cheap, scalable. Maybe Sonja would be open to join me in this quest. Cheap and scalable technological models that would allow to do two things. First of all, and analyze and monitor the positive externalities, so the real values that farmers are already sort of establishing, and at the same time try to monitor and value, and also in that sense put into monetary terms, so monetize the true costs of their production. And then I would do two things. I would try to find a good way of transitioning the payment from the gap with those payments for the values and get a transition period so that the sum spent does not change, but it is redistributed throughout a period of, let's say, 10 years. And at the same time, I would look at the true cost of production and I would look through the value chain and I would try to bring the true cost of that production and split it in a logic throughout the value chain with the aim to derive at a cost point for the consumer in the supermarket that reflects the true cost and the true value of that particular production model. And that I would give a transition period for, let's say, 10 years. That's what I would do. If that is realistic, I'm not sure. So yeah, this is for me as a naive farmer doer, and of course Christoph as a scientist has to do this with much more
Well, but I think we need you on
realistic
board,
terms.
right? I mean, we need you and we need all the farmers on board. I think that's very important. We also have seen what happens if politics acts without getting the farmers on board in the European Union, in Germany in particular. And I think the gap definitely needs modifications, but we have to align then also together with the farmers. At the same time, I think there is a lot of potential also for modifications because, I mean, the farmers already seeing the negative effects of climate change, particular also when they work on their soils. You described your example on working on the sandy soils. I think that's a very good example. And I think we have to align the gap there, so the European subsidy system more with our climate goals. And I think we will have mutual benefits for both, for the incomes of the farmers being less affected by climate change, and at the same time fulfilling also our climate goals, which we have set by our own in the end. I think that's very important, and I think that is also what we need. And yeah, there might be a transition phase that might be not easy to solve, and definitively getting the farmers on board for that is not an easy task, but I mean, that's also not with the scientists, but with the politicians in the end. And I think I have a second point to mention. I think there is also, besides the Paris Agreement, so our climate goals, we also have agreements on securing our soils. So there's an UN framework which also particularly focuses on soils. That's not so much known as the climate framework, but it's also there, and it's also important. That's the UNCCD. And they have set in December in Riyadh a particular very ambitious goal. And that's first of all a global goal, but it includes also the society, it includes land rights, it includes smallholder farmers, it includes also making revenues for farmers. And that's already decided at the UN level. And now this is given to the member states. And the member states are all countries around the world. So it's now up to Germany, it's up to the European Union to implement this ambitious, agenda, what they decided in December. And I think that is also my second wish I have here, to get this on a national level, at the European level, implemented, to make this concrete and also make this or bring this into public and into national law. I think then we will be able to fulfill also these targets for the benefit of all, I think. And one very last point I wanted to make is also what I really agree with Sonja on the aspect of collaboration. I think that's also what I meant. We have to get the farmers on board. We have to find solutions which work from a scientific perspective, include the aspect of climate change, include biodiversity, but also farmers' perspective and incomes. I think we have to do that together. That sounds a bit like a phrase, but I think we will only solve this together, or we will not get there at all. Right? That's I think the major to do for the next years.
Yeah, it's great to hear that how we can move forward as a society and what kind of points we can take forward to solve this issue. We'll now move into the Q&A. phase. So the audience, please type in your questions. We have just a couple of minutes to address them. And Sonia, maybe while they're typing, you can just share with the audience like one message you would like to give to the everyday consumers, like what can they do, or yeah, how to help with the solution.
I find it super difficult to give any kind of advice or perspective to the individual, because we are being advised on so many levels. Reduce your footprint, eat less meat, do less flying, use your bike. None of this sounds like a real fun thing. And also when I listen a bit to Christoph, I absolutely agree. We are clear. We need to understand that this healthy soil, healthy ecosystem is our most precious wealth. And we need to not only protect it, but to grow it. However, we live in the now and here, and people have grown up with a different understanding, have grown up with different daily desires, because that's been how we've been trained. And to get from here to here, I really enjoyed your point, Benedict, with why not bail out farmers instead of banks. I really see this as an interesting perspective. What does that mean for the individual? I would be thrilled if we come up with a way of saving our money that really contributes to increasing ecosystem health. And that's a bit where we are coming from, trying to offer nature as an asset, not something that we pay into and that is costing more, and that's another thing we need to pay for, or we need to just reduce using it at all. No, how can we make this something that we invest in and it pays back, and it's increasing my personal wealth, and it's completely shifting? Is that an easy one? And do I have the one thing right now? No, but this is actually where I want to get to, that it's fun, that it's desirable, that it's something we passionately pursue, improving ecosystem, because it's the new cool.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this perspective. And we're also getting in a lot of questions already. One question from Sahil, he's asking, like 80% of European soils is degraded in factors are multiple, and one is fertilizers. Asking from India, are there solutions of cow dung as manure as regenerative solution in Europe? So the use of cow dung and regenerative farms in Europe.
I start. So I think I said that 60% of the European soils are degraded. Maybe not 80, but I think definitely that there's some range. And I think we also see that there are various factors degrading the soil. So it's not only about a lack of nutrients, but it could also be compaction, could also be too less biodiversity. And that is something what cannot be solved by adding more fertilizer, in which way, organic or mineral fertilizer. But of course, there are also aspects where the soil fertility is very low because of lack of nutrients. And of course, here there might be options with additional amounts of nutrients added in the systems. I had also the privilege to be in India 2 weeks ago and have visited a lot of agroforestry systems linked to agroecology practices. And I think they get also some recycling of the nutrients in a very positive way. So they didn't need mineral fertilizer, but have also used the amount of manure, have used also recycling from the field, from the residues. And I think that is also something what definitely works, what should be done more. So, I mean, we have also seen a lot of burning rice fields. I think that is also the worst what you can do for the soil. We will immediately all the biodiversity, all the organic matter is burned, and you don't add these very important components to the soil. So at the same time, I think using manure is already conducted in Europe. It has to be used in a bit better distribution, I think. It's very concentrated often in some regions and in others less. But I think we have to get to this recycling idea if we want to solve that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. We have one question from Josefa, which has also been liked up quite several times. What would you suggest to young people interested in farming and food and wanting to contribute in a positive way? Maybe Benedict, you want to start?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I would congratulate them for that choice because in today's time, if you care about food and soil and agriculture, you probably are betting on the right horse. So that would be my first priority. And then, to be honest with you, and this might sound a bit silly, but I mean this, and it comes from the heart, is not to care about anything, not to care about what anyone thinks, not to care what anybody says, but follow your heart and follow what you feel passionate about. That's the number one priority. And always find for a creative way of dealing with your problems. Like, don't write, if you want to work for a cool startup like the land banking group, don't apply for a job offering. But if you see they are job offering, that means they're looking for good people. So find a way to go around the job offering and impress Sonja by asking good questions in the chat. But no, really, do what feels right and take a risk and let it all out. Don't do anything half. Like, either don't do it at all or do it 100%. That's what I would say.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great answer, and also for me as a young person, good to keep in mind and push forward in that direction. We have a question from London, and I will make this our last question because we're already almost at the end of the panel. So we're having a lot of amazing questions, but unfortunately due to time, we can't ask all of them. So from London, what is the main focus? What should be the main focus? Speaking to politicians, buying farms and building capital, or educating the public or the farmers? What's the step-by-step and main priorities? Sonja, would you like to give an answer to that?
Again, there is not the silver bullet, and probably we need to do everything at the same time. But coming back to Benedict's point that he made before, there needs to be stability first. So there's a lot of insecurity, a lot of pressure on farmers. So the first thing needs not buying farms. It's actually giving back that entrepreneurial spirit to farmers. And this means helping them to come out of this daily pressure of being close to insolvency and with it back to the wall, as we said before. So really giving them a chance to be creative and to embrace the opportunity they have on their land. I would love to see them prioritizing rewarding beyond prescriptions. So really rewarding for these positive externalities, because they are so difficult to monetize on an individual level. It would be so much more effective if we could do this and just replace fossil fuel subsidies and throw them into supporting positive externalities, buying those positive externalities from farmers. And then, of course, education is always important. And also this notion of, if you rethink farming, and it's not just implementing policies and requirements, but it's like Benedict is living it, thinking in systems and really developing new coherent and lively systems. That's an absolutely attractive perspective, and you can use technology, and you're in the midst of a modern world. So making this a part of education, and just supporting the question before, make it as a passionate step in your professional choice is important and can be systematically supported.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you all three speakers for sharing your perspectives and also the way forward, especially also for us young people. So it was super inspiring and interesting. And also the conversations will definitely keep going beyond this panel, which is very crucial to bring in more, to save the soil and to bring the topic more forward. And we also had a question from Sonia asking how can we inspire people to embrace this. And I just want to also embrace here or mention the work Safe Soil is doing. So make sure also to check out the safesoil.org website, as we're bringing in people from different kind of parts who are working on soil to bring that topic more forward, with the goal of having 3 to 6% organic content in the soils. Thank you all for joining this panel, and I wish you an amazing day, rest of the day, wherever you've been joining from, and I hope you get something inspired out of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.